It was one of those nights where the sky seemed restless. The wind rattled the shutters, the rain drummed endlessly against the windows, and thunder rolled far in the distance. The storm outside was fierce, but inside that house, another storm was quietly waiting to break. The house looked ordinary from the street, a respectable home belonging to a respectable couple, Raghav and Mira. To the world, they were perfect. He, a successful businessman, sharp and commanding. She, the gentle wife, soft-spoken, patient, always smiling politely when neighbors greeted her. People admired them. People envied them. But what the world didn't know, what the neighbors never saw, was the darkness hidden behind the walls of that house. For years, Raghav's words had been sharp, cruel, cutting her down day after day. For years, his temper had been quick, his hands heavy, his heart cold. And for years, Mira endured it in silence. Everyone mistook her silence for kindness. They said, Mira is so patient. Mira is so forgiving. But silence can be dangerous. Silence is not always forgiveness. Sometimes silence is a storm waiting to break. And tonight, it would break. The clock on the wall struck 8. The sound echoed through the empty house. Raghav sat at the dining table, tapping his fork impatiently against his plate. Mira, he shouted, his voice filled with irritation. Where's my dinner? I've been waiting too long. From the kitchen, her voice came back soft, almost timid. Just a minute, Raghav. It's almost ready. Her tone was calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she stirred the pot on the stove. She looked down at the food carefully prepared, her face lit by the small kitchen lamp. And beside the sink, hidden from sight, lay an empty glass vial. It had taken her weeks to find it. Weeks of planning, of hiding, of waiting. And tonight, she had finally used it. She plated the food carefully, steaming rice, fragrant curry, the kind he always demanded. Then, she poured him a glass of red wine, his favorite indulgence. She carried the dishes into the dining room and placed them in front of him. Raghav didn't even look at her. He grabbed his spoon and dug in greedily. Finally, he muttered under his breath, at least you're good for something. Mira stood still for a moment, then sat across from him. Her gaze was lowered, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I hope it's to your taste tonight, she said softly. The storm outside grew louder. The wind howled against the windows. Lightning flickered across the room, casting long shadows over the table. Raghav chewed noisily, swallowing mouthful after mouthful, sipping his wine between bites. Then, as though remembering something, he smirked. You know, Mira, he said, his voice dripping with disdain, without me, you're nothing. You'd never survive on your own. You're too weak, too stupid. Mira kept her eyes down, but her lips pressed together tightly. Her fingers dug into her palms beneath the table. Her heart was beating fast, but her face showed nothing, because she knew. She knew what she had done. Minutes passed. The only sounds were the clink of cutlery, the storm outside, and the ticking of the clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second stretched longer than the last. And then it began. Raghav's chewing slowed. He coughed once, then again. His hand twitched. His brow furrowed. What is this? He muttered. He dropped his fork onto the plate with a loud clatter. His hand went to his throat. his face twisted in confusion and pain. What did you put in the food?" he gasped. Mira finally looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "For the first time, Raghav, I've done something only for myself." Raghav stumbled to his feet, knocking over the glass of wine. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth, seeping like blood into the fabric. He gasped for air, choking, coughing violently. You can't do this to me," he shouted, his voice breaking. But Mira did not move. She watched him struggle, watched him claw at his throat, watched his eyes widen in fear. For years, she had been the one trembling. For years, she had been the one afraid. But not tonight. Tonight, the fear belonged to him. Mira staggered, reaching out as though to grab her, but his strength was failing. His knees buckled. His body collapsed onto the floor with a heavy thud. He twitched once, twice, and then he was still. The storm outside roared. Lightning lit up the room. Thunder shook the walls. And in that chaos, Mira stood perfectly still, her breathing steady, her eyes fixed on the lifeless body of her husband. Minutes passed. The rain did not stop. The clock kept ticking. Mira walked slowly to the window and looked outside. The streets were empty, washed clean by the downpour. She placed her hand gently on the glass, feeling the coolness against her skin. Her voice was a whisper, barely audible over the storm. "The world will always remember me as the kind wife, and they will never know what I've done." Her lips curled into a faint smile, not of joy, not of triumph, but of release. For the first time in years, she felt free. But freedom came with a price. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning. What has she done? Would someone find out? Would the world ever discover her secret? She turned back to look at the body lying on the floor. A man who once held power over her. A man who made her believe she was weak. Now powerless. Now silent. Forever. The night dragged on. Every creak of the house made her tense. Every flash of lightning reminded her of the weight of her decision. But strangely, she felt no regret. She remembered the night she had cried alone, waiting for him to come home. She remembered the bruises she had hidden under her sleeves, the cruel words he had thrown at her over and over, breaking her spirit piece by piece. And she realized the woman who had endured all of that no longer existed. She was gone. Tonight, a new Mira had taken her place. The storm outside began to fade. The thunder grew softer, the rain lighter. But inside, the silence was heavier than ever. She sat down again at the table. The food sat untouched in front of her. The spilled wine stained the cloth deep red. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The clock counted on, merciless, unfeeling. And in that steady rhythm, she heard something else. The sound of freedom. Every storm has an end, but not every storm begins with thunder. Some storms begin in silence, in patience stretched too far, in kindness mistaken for weakness. And when those storms break, they leave nothing the same. That night, the storm ended. The house grew quiet. And in that silence, a wife's story was rewritten forever. Mara was no longer the kind wife. She was something else, something the world would never understand. She was free.